Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Melia, and today I am joined by Liz Barron. This is being recorded during International Coaching Week 2024. And today we're going to be having a conversation about what's involved in becoming a credentialed coach. So today we'll be focusing on the ACC journey, and there'll be additional conversations this week about the PCC and MCC. And I suppose the main reason myself and Liz are having this conversation is because I went through the process last year and I got my credential in October 2023, and Liz was my mentor. So I invited her along today, and hopefully we can kind of expand people's understanding of the process, because I suppose you can see a list of things to do, but it's really listening to the actual process and those steps, what's involved in those steps, that hopefully will help people and encourage people to go and take the leap and do their credential. So Liz, thanks for joining me this morning. How are you?
Absolutely good. Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation, and it's great to be talking about and reflecting on kind of how we go through that process of ACC credentialing. It's a great place to start.
Yeah, and it's and I think it's a meaty process, and it's an enjoyable process, but I think it's one definitely that's worth having a conversation about, because you've no idea really what's involved until you get stuck in. But so hopefully we'll enlighten some people today.
Yeah. Well, I kind of think about it as that, it is a bit of a project, and especially, I mean, if people have trained recently on the level 1 or level 2 courses, then a lot of it is built into that process. It's really people who might have trained prior to that, and they're going, I know you went the portfolio route, so there's a number of bits and pieces to it. And, I think it's not just about ticking boxes, it's actually to look at it as a development, a piece of development work, and something that gives you the opportunity to grow and kind of maximize your impact as a coach. And also, I suppose the other side of it is that increasingly organizations are starting to look for ICF accreditation, because it's a worldwide standard. So, in the beginning, it mightn't have been something that was sought, but it's definitely becoming more of a requirement, I think, by organizations who are looking for coaches for their coaching panels.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying there about a journey, and I will be honest and admit that I came into it going, ACC grant, where do I sign? And I hope to have this done now in 4 months. And I think I was just really, I was pleasantly surprised. And so so we came into it, and I kind of realized, so just to kind of give people an idea in terms of a typical timeline, and Liz, you might my timeline was about 18 months. And I didn't anticipate that it would take me that long, but I'm really glad it did take me that long, because there's just lots of parts of the journey that just require some kind of nice reflection, and just to give you time for all the learning to land and kind of integrate it into your practice. And I think if I had sped through it and ticked the box, I don't think I would have kind of integrated as much learning as I did. So I suppose that was one major surprise, as
a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, and we can kind of go into the surprises that kind of came along the way.
And that is back to the coaching mindset piece as well, isn't it? It's like saying, I'm not here to get the piece of paper at the end. That's great, but that's not the purpose in and of itself. It's actually to focus on the journey more than the destination. And I think that just makes it easier for you to take it in steps. Because I've had several mentor coaching clients who were putting themselves under pressure, and it was kind of counterproductive then. It meant they weren't taking that time to reflect and really integrate what they were learning, and that's one of the reasons why the mentor coaching piece is that's why they say it's a minimum of 4 months. So your mentor coaching, your 10 hours of mentor coaching, whether they're done, some of them can be done in a group, up to 7 hours can be done in a group. And the remaining hours then are done one-to-one. But the idea of that is that, you know, you perhaps record a coaching session with one of your clients that's used with your mentor coach, perhaps to review, you know, how are you getting on? Are we seeing the competencies there? And then that means you might choose something to say, okay, that's something I'm really going to work on now between now and the next recording. So it allows you to, rather than recording, say, 2 or 3 sessions at the beginning and going, oh yeah, I'm going to use all these, it's actually to kind of build in the learning as you go along. And, you know, I suppose the other side of it is that if you're going the portfolio route, then you will have to submit a recording for the performance evaluation part of the credential. So, you know, using recordings and learning from those with your mentor coach, you know, means that you should come out of the mentor coaching with at least one recording that you feel confident in submitting. You know, there's no guarantees, but you know what you're looking for, and you know, you have a sense of, does this meet the requirements that they're expecting?
And that was actually, I suppose that was kind of the beginning of the journey, is finding a mentor. And I actually didn't realize that I had to go find somebody who is an accredited mentor. I kind of thought I could just ask someone who's an experienced coach. So that was another learning along the process.
Yeah. There is a registry. So there's a mentor coach registry on the ICF website, on the global website, coachingfederation.org. So basically anyone who is a qualified mentor coach, meaning that you've been through the process yourself, you've been, you know, so if you're looking to get an ACC credential, you need to have a mentor coach who is at least ACC for 6 years. So in other words, they need to have been through even their own renewal process. So someone who's recently qualified as ACC for the first time can't be a mentor coach. You have to have gone through at least one renewal cycle, because your credentials are renewed every 3 years. And so for an ACC coach, or someone looking to get ACC credential, can be mentored by an ACC who's renewed, or a PCC, or an MCC master certified coach. So yeah, and looking on the mentor coach registry is a good place to start if you don't personally know somebody, you know. And there are clearly defined competencies required of a mentor coach in terms of being able to give feedback, being able to, you know, having good knowledge of the ICF competencies. And you know, no more than any coaching relationship, you know, you might find that individual mentor coaches' styles may differ a little bit, but you know, finding someone that you feel you can work with and that's going to help you grow. So it is a partnering element as well.
Yeah. And I thought I loved those kind of 2 stages of that kind of partnership. So the first one was being part of a group and doing, I think it was 7 hours mentoring with the group. And that was so like it was actually a really lovely experience, because it was a good mixture of ACC and PC, or people shooting for the PCC as well.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
so in that, what I really found like beneficial was just that witnessing PCC coaches mentoring. So there was just like loads of layers of learning, and then being coached by them. And it was a lovely kind of group that we had. And actually, and I was trying to think about what the benefits today. And I renewed our kind of a friendship with a colleague who I hadn't seen in a while. And you just never know who you're going to meet in the groups. And there's been lots of kind of ripple benefits from that group. And so once we'd done the 7 hours, then we moved to, I did my 3 hours one-to-one with you. And that was, and I was telling Melissa Sayers about one of the exercises you did. And
you're going to have to remind me.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll never forget it. But I loved, like, initially you were like, okay, so Aisling, we're going to take one of your transcripts and what I'd like you to do is to go through your transcript and kind of label each sentence with the competency, the related competency. And I was like, really? I have to go through this like 50 minutes, and there's a quick learning. Don't bother doing a 50-minute
recording.
Yeah.
Your recordings, if you were submitting a recording for ICF, it has to be a minimum of 20 minutes and a maximum of 59 minutes. So I generally advise people to keep it to around 30 to 40 minutes. Just, you know, somebody once said, well, the longer you go on, the more mistakes you might make. But I don't think that's the case, really. It's just, you know, you're trying to, I suppose, it is a real coaching session. So you're trying to, I suppose, keep it very, I suppose you could say, contained and very focused on perhaps one area, because I think that can just mean in any coaching session, if we don't maintain that sort of focus on what's the outcome we're trying to work with the client on, that it can kind of go all over the place a little bit, you know.
Yeah. So that was, by the time I'd done a few recordings, I was like, okay, this 30 to 40 minute is definitely the sweet spot, especially when I'm going to have to go through
transcribe it as well,
transcribe it, and then identify all the competencies. But I was talking to a colleague of mine about this exercise, and when I told her about it, she said, wow, that sounds like a really educationally expansive exercise. And I was like, that actually really describes it really well, because initially I was like, God, this is going to take me all day. But once I got into it, I was like, it kind of went from, we all look at the list of competencies and we're like, okay, I understand that, that's fine. But I suppose I moved from understanding the competencies to feeling like I was actually integrating it into my actual coaching practice.
Yeah.
So it felt like it was a bit of a kind of a game changer in terms of really kind of knowing the competencies. So thanks for that, Liz.
Yeah, great. Well, obviously, you know, I suppose the thing is, it's really, you know, as opposed to it being kind of like a teacher-student relationship, that we are, you know, really encouraging all of us as coaches to reflect on our own work. And, you know, this type of reflection is a skills-based and a competency-based reflection that is happening through mentor coaching. And I suppose that's the other thing to say, is that people do sometimes get confused between mentor coaching and supervision. And of course, there are commonalities to an extent, but mentor coaching is primarily focused on how do you build your skills as a coach for the purposes of ICF credentialing. Even if you weren't going for credential, you could say mentor coaching has value anyway, but it is a requirement. And supervision is more focused on, you know, the practice of the coach, you know, their own reflection, maybe issues that are coming up for them, challenges, questions. So they can go hand in hand, but, you know, the areas are different and people do get confused, I think, between them.
Yeah.
And a lot of mentor coaches might also be supervisors, but that may not necessarily be the case. Supervisors aren't necessarily mentor coaches. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good to know, because it's there is, because you can get that mixed up. And then I was thinking of the whole experience and kind of the emotional the emotions that were kind of attached to different parts of it. And I think the feedback piece, and I don't know if I read Emer Doyle, she has a piece on the ICF website about her experience of the MCC. And as I read it, I was like, I could really identify with some of what she was saying in terms of just that your ego, and, you know, because you're getting all this feedback, and how it's and I think it had been a while since I'd received feedback, and it was good to go through it and to kind of, you know, face up to it, and, you know, take, and to be fair, like, you are so good at giving feedback, and it's not even that, but it's just sometimes ego comes in and is trying to protect you from stuff.
Of course, yeah.
So
And you know, yeah, it can feel a bit like being in school, you know. And I know when we did it in the group, like I think that's always something that I kind of throw out first when we're talking about, you know, contracting even with the group. It's, you know, and how do we feel about feedback? And, you know, we'll have a little bit of discussion about that. And you know, most people will say, oh, you know, it can be a bit, somebody described it as pinchy.
Yeah.
But you know, I think everybody is there to improve and to be at their best, and to be, you know, to be at their best in service of their clients. And a word that I've been using lately to describe feedback is, I think every useful feedback needs to be actionable. So to me, that's what I would focus on. You know, it's about building people up rather than, you know, making them feel yeah, I don't know, less than.
Yeah.
I think we are hard enough on ourselves without having somebody go, oh God, I really messed that up. So it's all learning. And like, I learn every time when we're in a group, and I learn every time when that's why I love it. So, you know, it reminds me, you know, or I'll hear a good question or something like that. So I think it's a great leveler actually, because it, you know, it just means we're all there to learn from each other. And there is that, you know, kind of good sense of it being that kind of supportive environment that's in the group, and you want the same thing then with your mentor coach. So just making sure that you feel it's a good fit. It's not about what you're not doing, you know. It's you know, don't do this, don't do that. There's probably a few don'ts. Like, don't tell somebody what to do all the time. That's not a great idea. But you know what I mean? It's more about giving yourself credit for the things you are doing. Yeah, and yeah, so I think it should be a positive experience, but you are going to feel a little bit vulnerable, I think, when you're asking somebody else to review your work. And I think certainly that's how I would have felt at the time. There's always this little inner cringe of, oh my God.
Then you're listening to yourself.
Yeah.
You're actually listening, like it's when you have it's all very comfortable in your coaching away, and then you have to actually listen to your own voice and coaching somebody else. But it's worth it.
And just actually on that subject, a few people say, and you know, I think it is easier, I think, when we're on Zoom and we can just press record than being in a room with somebody and you actually have to like press record on your phone or something. I don't know, it feels like it's more in your face or something, or at least it does to me. But the other thing is, there are a lot of people who really find that really nerve-wracking, like coaching somebody and it's being recorded, you know. So I think it's maybe something to get some coaching on. You know, if you find that you struggle with just that piece about, you know, I go to pieces or I feel really tense when I'm recording a client session. So it was suggested to me, I remember ages ago, you know, when you're going into this area of wanting to work on your coaching, to just begin to record all your sessions. Obviously, you need to get client consent, but then it kind of takes the pressure, takes the performance anxiety, I think, out of, oh, I've agreed this now with this client and I have to record them. You know, just get into the habit of recording, and I do think you start to forget about it. It's in the background.
And I think there was an analogy that you used as well, and it's like kind of, and when you're kind of doing your recordings, it's like driving a car. You do have to, or doing your driving lesson actually.
Yeah, so driving test, I think, yeah.
Or your driving test, that's the test. That's right.
Yeah.
But and it's that piece around, and I think I wish I had probably kind of really delved into the competencies more before I did my recordings. So I kind of had them more, just they were more part of my how I coached. Because I suppose you do kind of have to, like that, check your mirrors more obviously as you're going through the session. And you know, so that's I suppose that analogy I found really helpful in terms of kind of how to approach those.
Yeah. The word I kind of use in those situations is to be more, very intentional about, you know, so making sure that it's, you know, an example is that, you know, sometimes people will say, so what would you like to talk about today? And that's fine as a kind of an opening, sort of getting the client to talk about what they want to work on. But at some point, narrowing the focus of that down and saying, okay, so you've talked a little bit about that. What would you like to leave the session with, or what would be a good outcome for today? How would you know when you got that? So it's the difference between it being a conversation and a coaching session, is to have it focused on some specific thing that the client wants to work with, and usually that they don't know the answer to that question anyway, but you're there to help them figure that part out.
So we've been through the mentoring, doing some reflecting here. I'm trying to think of, is there anything else, any other areas or parts of the process that listeners might need to know about?
I suppose I was thinking about it earlier, and depending, like obviously depending on what mentor coach you go with, I think if you can do a group session to begin with as the starting point. The other thing to say is there isn't a timeline on mentor coaching. So, you could decide, okay, I'm going to do some mentor coaching and actually not be thinking about applying for your ACC till next year. So it doesn't expire. And in a way, by doing that, it's like that thing, you're getting the driving lessons, you're doing it in such a way that you are actually now able to integrate it into your coaching. But I suppose the thing about that is going with a group to begin with is a good place to start, because it is, as you described, people are there to learn from each other. You do get a good understanding to begin with of the competencies. You should be seeing them in action. You should be, a mentor coach who's doing group work will be talking about what the competencies look like in action. There's loads of resources on the ICF website and on YouTube and so on around things like the coaching exam. So the new coaching exam that came in last year, I think it was last year anyway. But I suppose there's just plenty of like videos and stuff about competencies. So there's loads of resources there, and coaches sharing what their experience was of going through the process. So learning from those. The exam can be a bit tricky.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. That was a big one that we need to cover.
And the other thing is, and this is sort of it's a kind of a watch this space piece. There was a pilot this year of a different version of the coaching exam. So as I understand it, it was running from earlier this year until May, and presumably at some point they will be saying, okay, well, here for ACC coaches, ACC level coaches, this is the exam, because I think it was felt that it actually requires a lot of coaching experience to be able to answer the situational questions. So it is more of a coaching knowledge, like knowledge of competencies, knowledge of the code of ethics, of the definition of coaching. But that's always the last step in the whole process anyway. So my advice would be kind of don't worry too much. Take it one step at a time. The mentor coaching is a good place to start, because you will, your coaching will improve. You'll have more impact with your clients. So I do think it's not, it's not about, what would you say? Yeah, it's not about sort of having everything kind of in all lined up and ready to go kind of day one. It's just saying, okay, I can do this bit by bit, work my way through it. And I know even when I was doing, I think it was my ACC, and I know I had decided that I was definitely going to get it done by the end of the year. And I did mentor coaching with Emer and with Mariana Wright as well. And I remember thinking to myself, oh yeah, no, I have to get it in. And then I went, why am I pushing myself like so hard on this? Like, I know I'm working on it. I know I'm working towards it. And there was, life gets in the way and things happen and so on and so on. So I think, we need to be kind to ourselves and understanding it, and have a bit of flexibility in our approach. So rather than sort of if you like, an artificial deadline. And it takes them a while to turn around the result as well. So it's an important thing to remember that if you have a credential and you're renewing it, that just to allow enough time, don't leave it till the last minute. Make sure that, you know, if you're renewing an ACC credential, you will need more mentor coaching. So it is a bit of an incentive for people to say, actually, I want to move to PCC because you don't need more mentor coaching if you're doing it that way.
Yeah.
Or you may not.
Yeah. And just to, I suppose, add kind of the real life experience of doing the exam. I think it came in, was it about 18 months ago at this point?
Yes,
so
yeah.
I had the pleasure of doing it last October or September actually. And so you have the choice of, you can do it from home or you can do it in the centre. And it's 3 hours long. So I kind of was like, I think I'll just do it in the centre. So, and because I knew somebody who'd done it at home, and they said it was quite fiddly just getting everything ready.
Yeah.
Not like it's very doable, but I suppose you have to have, you know, all potential kind of information or pieces that could help you out of the way, and you have to show video and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So, and my experience was I had done the Lista de Hart has a lot of information on her website, and there's lots of, I think there's lots of free information there around how to prepare for the exam. And there's a couple of mock exams available that you can do, and I think you can get a couple of CCE credits for them as well. So my experience was that while they're definitely helpful and useful, I suppose they were created based on people's memories of exam questions. And the exam questions were in those mock exams might have been 2 sentences long, and you had to pick the worst answer and the best answer. And then there was probably 2 other answers. So when I went into the exam, the questions were, I'd say, double the length of what I'd experienced. And that gave me, I was like really shocked. I was like, I'm never going to get through all the exams or all these questions in 3 hours. So
and it's 81 questions, I think.
81 questions.
Yeah, but it does take, you need to really, like, time is important as well. So, you know, the pace that you work through it is all taken into account. So it is finding that balance of, giving yourself enough time, but also moving through it as well.
So, no, I have to say, by the end of the first half, because you get a break halfway through, like, I was sweating, and I think if I'd known that there was quite a difference between the mock exams that are available and the real thing, I mightn't have had that little panic halfway through. So it's but you know, it's all very doable. And I think also just being that awareness of, I suppose, what's expected of an ACC coach in the recording is not the same as a PCC, but ACC and PCC candidates are doing the same exam.
And I think that's what this pilot is seeking to address, is to kind of differentiate between people taking the exam at ACC level, you know, people who are looking for an ACC credential versus PCC. So like, it's just, I think it isn't an easy one to prepare for necessarily, but there are resources there, and there are hints and tips, and you know, I think that certainly there's more information being shared now that it's been around for a little while, and hopefully we'll see news from ICF soon about an actual launch of this, you know. So I think if anyone was a bit concerned about the difficulty of the current exam, you might want to hold off for a little.
But like, the thing is, I relied on all those resources and I passed it. So so that's the good news. But it's still, I think it was just, if I had that little bit of knowing beforehand, I mightn't have had that little panic halfway through. But I did that in kind of month 17, and you get your results there on the day. So that was
great. And that's, I suppose, the other thing about the whole credential process is that you know what's happening at each stage. So I forget how long they say it takes at the moment, but if they have to evaluate recordings, the recordings get sent in, all of your documentation that you might be submitting about your training you've completed, all of those things, you get notification, okay, this bit is passed, or it's gone past this stage, and now the next stage is they'll be evaluating the recording or whatever. So it's not a vacuum. You do get a sense of things are progressing, and then, as we said, the final step then is the exam and getting your credential badge, hopefully, So
yeah, and I think as well on the ICF website, you kind of you open up your kind of like an account for your
that's right, yeah,
journey, and it's fairly clear, and you just tick off the things as you do it.
yeah.
So I found that was a fairly and I think once you open that account and you start that journey, you see the list, it gives you more clarity. And I suppose that's the whole point of the conversation today, is just give more clarity around the credentials. So I suppose we've done plenty of talk, and hopefully we've covered all the important bits. I suppose to kind of wrap up, what do you think would be maybe the top tip or top piece of information?
What would be the top tip? I think it is that thing of go easy on yourself. For me, that's, coaches, we I think expect a lot of ourselves, which is a positive attribute, but I think we can be hard on ourselves as well. And it is that thing of being kind to yourself. And it definitely, like, I've had lots of people say it, and when I went through the process myself, I felt the same thing, that you can really see the impact that it has on your coaching. If you've built up competencies in certain areas, it can help you with just being braver. It can help you, the way sometimes you might be with a client and you're you want to ask a question, but you're kind of holding back a little bit. I think what this encourages you to do is to go there, is to, with the client's permission, to ask the question, because that's what you're there to do, So I think it is to be kind to yourself in the process, and not be rushing it and putting pressure on yourself. That's my overall suggestion.
Yeah, and I think I definitely echo that. I think it's just to go at the pace that you can. Like, there's no deadline, getting it done quick. Like, it's just like that. Give yourself the space to do it when you can, when you're in the right mindset. And that's I think that's advice I would have benefited from at the outset as well. And knowing that, I think the benefits are, like, I definitely feel like I came out of the process more confident, more competent. And I'd met loads of people along the journey as well. And so it was really, really worthwhile. And it's a journey, as opposed to something that you need to tick the box.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. So it was a pleasure working with you and continuing to work together in lots of different ways. So thanks for that, Ashley.
Thanks, Liz. Really appreciate your time today, and just wish everyone the best of luck with their own credential journey. And I think, just in terms of finding information, there's plenty on the ICF Ireland website, the global website, and I think really relying on your peers as well, because and keeping talking to them, and in order to get from the beginning to the end. Okay, so listen, thanks a lot, and wish everyone a happy International Coaching Week, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Aisling.
Thanks, Liz.